Lumaki si Amihan Reyes sa isang maliit na bayan sa Quezon na halos walang alam tungkol sa mayamang pamilyang Montemayor. Ang tanging naiwan ng kanyang lola bago ito namatay ay isang lumang kahong-kahoy. Ilang dokumentong hindi niya lubos maintindihan at bilin na dalhin iyon sa Casa Montemayor sa Tagaytay sa araw ng memorial ni Don Rafael Montemayor. Hindi pumunta si Amihan para humingi ng mana. Ngunit sa araw na iyon, bago pa niya malaman kung bakit siya ipinatawag, una muna siyang hinusgahan ng buong bahay batay sa kanyang lumang cardigan, simpleng cotton dress, at sapatos na halatang ilang taon nang ginagamit. Ang babaeng pinalabas sa sariling bahay. Makulimlim ang umaga nang bumaba si Amihan Reyes mula sa provincial bus sa Tagaytay, dala ang isang lumang canvas bag at kahong-kahoy na halos kasing haba ng kanyang braso. Hindi iyon eleganteng kahon. May gasgas ang gilid. Kupas na ang varnish. At may maliit na brass clasp na ilang beses nang inayos ng lola niya gamit ang kamay lamang. Ngunit iyon ang pinakahuling bagay na ipinahawak sa kanya ni Lola Pilar bago ito pumanaw 2 buwan na ang nakalipas. Dalhin mo ito sa Casa Montemayor sa memorial ni Don Rafael. Sabi ng matanda noon. Huwag mong ibigay kahit kanino. Hanapin mo si Attorney Lorenzo Salcedo. Ilang beses nagtanong si Amihan kung sino si Don Rafael at bakit alam ng lola niya ang pangalan ng abogado ng isang pamilyang may-ari ng resorts, farms at real estate companies. Ang sagot palagi ay, kapag dumating ka roon, malalaman mo. Ayaw niya sa ganoong sagot. Lalo na ngayong nakatayo siya sa harap ng isang malawak na wrought iron gate na may crest na kapareho ng maliit na ukit sa ibabaw ng kahon. 3 dahon na nakapalibot sa letrang M. Sa unang pagkakataon, hindi na niya kayang kumbinsihin ang sarili na coincidence lamang iyon. Ang Casa Montemayor ay hindi mukhang bahay na tinitirhan ng normal na pamilya. Nakapatong ito sa isang malawak na bahagi ng burol. Napapalibutan ng pine trees, terraces at hardin na parang laging handa para sa magazine shoot. Spanish-Filipino architecture bato sa ibaba, dark wood sa itaas, Capiz-inspired windows at malawak na veranda na nakaharap sa malamig na tanawin ng Tagaytay. Sa driveway ay sunod-sunod ang luxury SUVs. May event staff na nagdadala ng bulaklak, caterers na pumapasok sa service wing at mga bisitang nakabarong at designer dresses. Napatingin si Amihan sa sarili. Light blue cotton dress, lumang cream cardigan na tinahi niya mismo sa manggas, brown flats na binili pa ng ina niya ilang taon bago ito namatay. Hindi siya nahihiya sa damit niya. Pero alam niyang hindi iyon nababagay sa eksenang nasa harap. Lumapit siya sa security desk at sinabi, "Good morning. May appointment po ako kay Attorney Lorenzo Salcedo. Amihan Reyes." Tiningnan ng guard ang guest list. Wala po rito. Sinabi ng lola ko na pumunta ako today. Memorial po ngayon? Family and invited guests lang. I understand. Pero expected daw ako ng attorney. Tiningnan ng guard ang kahon. Supplier po ba kayo? Hindi. Delivery hindi rin? Relative. Napahinto siya. Hindi ko alam. Dinala siya ng isang event coordinator sa side entrance habang sinusubukang tawagan ng office ng attorney. Hindi sumasagot. Sa loob, mas lalo niyang naramdaman ang agwat ng mundo nila. May malaking family portrait sa hallway. Antique furniture, polished floors, at floral arrangements na mas mahal pa marahil sa isang buwan niyang kita sa cooperative. Hindi niya hinawakan ng kahit ano. Ang trabaho niya sa Quezon ay restoration ng lumang furniture, kaya sanay siyang tumingin sa wood grain, joints at damage patterns. Sa isang console table, napansin niyang original Nara ang frame pero bagong veneer ang ibabaw. Sa kabilang dingding, may bakanteng bahagi sa pagitan ng 2 portraits na halatang dati ay may nakasabit doon dahil mas maputla ang wallpaper sa gitna. Hindi niya alam kung bakit iyon ang napansin niya sa halip na chandeliers. Siguro dahil mas komportable siyang magbasa ng mga bakas sa kahoy kaysa sa mukha ng mayayamang taong nakatingin sa kanya. Habang hinihintay ang coordinator, dumaan ang isang matandang housekeeper. Napahinto ito nang makita si amihan. Hindi simpleng curiosity ang ekspresyon. Parang nakakita ng multo. May sabi ni amihan. Umiling ang babae at nagpatuloy. Ngunit ilang beses pa ring lumingon. Doon siya unang nakita ni Daniela Montemayor. Papunta ito sa main salon. Hawak ang phone at may kasamang dalawang relatives. 30 years old. Immaculate ang cream dress. Straight ang buhok at halatang sanay na ang buong bahay ay sumusunod kapag nagsasalita siya. Who is she? Tanong niya sa event coordinator. Ma'am, she says she's here for Attorney Salcedo. Tiningnan ni Daniela si amihan mula ulo hanggang paa. Hindi lantad na disgust. Mas masahol pa mabilis na assessment na tapos na agad. Why may dala po akong para sa kanya? Sagot ni amihan. From whom my grandmother, Nang Pilar Reyes. Walang recognition sa mukha ni Daniela. And your grandmother was my grandmother. Bahagyang napakunot ang noo ng babae. I mean, what was her connection to this family? That's what I'm here to find out. Isa sa mga relatives ni Daniela ay bahagyang natawa. Daniela? Baka claimant na naman? Narinig ni amihan. Claimant tanong niya. Nothing. Sagot ni Daniela. Listen. Today is a private memorial. We get people showing up whenever there's a family event. Former employees. Distant acquaintances. People claiming old promises. Hindi ako humihingi ng pera. I didn't say you were. Your cousin did? Bahagyang nag-iba ang mukha ni Daniela. Attorney Salcedo is handling estate matters today. If you have documents, leave them with reception. I was told not to give this box to anyone except him. That sounds dramatic. Maybe. But that was the instruction. And who exactly gave you the right to walk into a private family memorial dressed like you came from a provincial market and start making demands? Tahimik ang paligid. Hindi malakas ang boses ni Daniela. Pero sapat para marinig ng coordinator at dalawang relatives. Amihan felt the familiar heat crawl up her neck. Hindi siya bago sa ganitong tingin. Sa Quezon, ilang buyers na ang tumawad sa furniture nila dahil simple ang workshop. Ilang tourist na rin ang nagtanong kung local helper ba siya habang siya ang mismong gumagawa ng restoration plan. Ngunit may kakaiba sa paraan ng sinabi ni Daniela, ang provincial market. Na parang hindi lamang damit ang tinutukoy kundi buong lugar kung saan siya galing. I'm not making demands. Sagot ni amihan. I'm waiting for the person I was told to meet. Then wait outside. The coordinator brought me in. And I'm telling you to go out. Bago pa lumaki ang usapan, lumapit si Mateo de Vera mula sa kabilang hallway. Naka-dark barong siya. May tablet sa isang kamay at ekspresyon ng taong matagal nang ginagamit para ayusin ang problemang gawa ng iba. Kilala ni amihan ang mukha niya mula sa business pages na nakita niya minsan sa cooperative office. COO ng Montemayor Hospitality and Estate Development. Hindi Montemayor by blood. Ayon sa article. Pero halos miyembro na ng pamilya dahil lumaki sa estate ang ama niyang dating property manager. What's happening? Tanong niya. Daniela answered first. Someone showed up looking for Attorney Salcedo with some old box and no appointment. Mateo looked at amihan. Your name, Amihan Reyes. May maliit na pagbabago sa mukha niya. Halos hindi makita? Reyes. Yes. From where? Quezon Province. Who asked you to come? My grandmother. Name Pilar Reyes. This time, Mateo clearly recognized something. But instead of softening, naging mas maingat siya. Do you have identification? Amihan stared at him. Do I look like I'm applying for entry clearance? It's a private estate event. I already showed ID at the gate. And the box? Private. If it concerns the estate, we need to know what you're bringing in. Attorney Salcedo needs to know. Not everyone else. Daniela crossed her arms. See? She refuses to cooperate. Mateo did not immediately agree, but his tone remained controlled. Miss Reyes, there have been inheritance-related approaches to this family before. If you have documents or a claim, there is a process. I don't have a claim. Then why are you here? Because my grandmother died and left me one instruction. Bring this box here today and give it to Lorenzo Salcedo. That's it. Mateo glanced at the crest carved into the lid. For a second, his eyes narrowed. Where did you get that box? From my grandmother. How long did she have it? I don't know. Did she ever work here? I don't know. Daniela let out an impatient breath. This is ridiculous. Mateo, we have donors arriving in 20 minutes. Then to Amihan, leave the box and go. No. You're not family. I never said I was. Then you have no reason to be inside this house. That sentence landed differently. Not because Amihan thought the house belonged to her. She didn't. But because the old housekeeper who had stared at her earlier was now standing at the far end of the hallway, frozen again. This time, Amihan noticed what the woman was looking at, not her clothes. Her face. Excuse me. Amihan called softly. The woman looked startled. Do you know my grandmother? Daniela turned sharply. Aling Rosa, go back to the kitchen. The housekeeper hesitated. Ma'am, Daniela? Now. Before she left, Aling Rosa looked once more at Amihan and whispered something so quietly only Mateo seemed to hear. His face changed. What did she say? Amihan asked. Mateo did not answer. Daniela's patience snapped. Enough. Security. 2 guards approached, clearly uncomfortable. Please escort Miss Reyes to the veranda. If Attorney Salcedo confirms he is expecting her, someone can speak to her there. Amihan tightened her grip on the box. I can walk. Then walk. She did. Head high, even as every step felt like being measured. They passed the main salon where a large portrait of Don Rafael Montemayor hung above the fireplace. Silver-haired, severe, dignified. Beneath it were photographs of his descendants. Amihan slowed only because one small framed picture on a side table caught her attention, a young woman in a 1970s dress, smiling beside Don Rafael, before the photo had clearly been cropped. Something about the eyes made Amihan stop. Same narrow shape as her mother's. Same slightly uneven eyebrows as her own. Who is that? She asked. Daniela followed her gaze and immediately picked up the frame. No one relevant to you? What's her name? We are done. Mateo looked at the photograph, then at Amihan. For the first time, doubt entered his expression, not doubt about her, but about the certainty with which they had already judged her. Sa veranda, malamig ang hangin. Nagsimula nang dumating ang ibang guests sa main entrance, habang si Amihan ay nakatayo sa side portion na parang taong pansamantalang inilagay doon hanggang maalis ng tuluyan. Hindi niya alam kung galit ba siya o nahihiya. Siguro pareho. Gusto niyang umalis. Iwan na lamang ang buong problema. Wala naman siyang kailangan sa mga Montemayor. May bahay siya sa Quezon. Maliit, pero kanya. May cooperative na umaasa sa kanya. May mga lumang mesa siyang kailangang tapusin next week. Hindi niya kailangan ng marble halls o relatives na nagsusukat ng tao sa damit. Ngunit naramdaman niya ang kahon sa mga kamay niya at naalala ang lola niya sa hospital bed. Mahina na ang boses. Pero malinaw ang bilin. Huwag kang aalis hanggat hindi mo nakakausap si Lorenzo. Kaya, nanatili siya. Makalipas ang 5 minuto. Lumabas si Mateo sa veranda. Wala si Daniela. Attorney Salcedo is on the way from the trustee meeting. Sabi niya. You can wait here. Salamat sa pahintulot. You're angry. Observant ka pala. He accepted the sarcasm. I'm trying to understand. You had 10 minutes inside to try? And you refused basic questions. Because you asked them like I was trying to steal the furniture. You arrive at a private memorial with an antique box carrying the family crest and no clear explanation. I don't have a clear explanation. That's difficult to believe. That's your problem. Mateo looked at her dress, then immediately seemed to realize how it might appear and returned his gaze to her face. Daniela should not have commented on how you're dressed. But throwing me out was fine, I didn't say that. You didn't stop it. That hit? You could have asked me to wait somewhere without making me look like someone begging for food at the back door. Mateo was quiet. Aling Rosa said you look like someone. Amihan's anger paused. Who, Elena? Who is Elena Montemayor? He looked toward the closed doors behind them. Don Rafael's eldest daughter. And where is she? She died years ago. Something cold moved through Amihan's chest. Why would I look like her? That's what I'm trying to understand. Was that her photo inside? Mateo did not answer immediately. Which was answer enough. Why did Daniela say she was irrelevant? Family history is complicated. That sentence usually means someone doesn't want to explain it. Before Mateo could respond, a black sedan stopped near the front steps. An older Filipino man in a dark suit stepped out holding a leather document case, accompanied by a younger legal associate. Even from the veranda, Mateo recognized him. Attorney Salcedo. The lawyer looked toward the entrance, then scanned the guests as though searching for someone. Daniela appeared from inside and descended 2 steps to meet him. Attorney. Finally, we need you in the library before the memorial starts. Lorenzo did not move. Has Miss Reyes arrived? Daniela paused. Who, Amihan Reyes? Mateo looked at Amihan. She felt her stomach tighten. She came. Daniela said carefully. There was some confusion. We asked her to wait outside. Lorenzo's face changed. Outside. She had no invitation. Where is she? Mateo raised a hand from the veranda. Lorenzo turned, saw Amihan, and stopped completely. For several seconds, the old lawyer simply stared at her face, then at the wooden box in her hands. Diyos ko, he whispered. He walked toward her faster than a man his age should have, ignoring Daniela calling after him. Amihan. Yes. Anak ka ni Teresa Reyes. Amihan's grip tightened. Yes. At apo ni Pilar. Yes. Lorenzo closed his eyes for 1 second, almost as if confirming a prayer. Then he looked at Daniela, Mateo, the guards, and the relatives gathering near the doorway. His voice became sharp. Huwag niyo siyang paalisin. The entire veranda froze. Attorney Daniela started. Si Amihan Reyes ang kinatawan ng panganay na sangay ng Montemayor Family Trust. Si Lance. Amihan could hear the wind moving through the trees. Daniela stared at him. That's impossible. No, Lorenzo replied. What is impossible is that nobody here recognized the consequence of Elena Montemayor's line before throwing her granddaughter out. Mateo's face went completely still. Amihan felt the world tilt. Granddaughter. Lorenzo looked at her more gently now. Your grandmother did not bring you here to ask the Montemayors for anything. Amihan. He touched the old wooden box with careful fingers. She brought you here because part of what this family has been calling theirs has legally been waiting for your branch all along. Amihan looked past him through the open doors of Casa Montemayor. At the portraits. At the polished floor. At the empty space on the wall where a picture had once hung. At Daniel, who only minutes earlier had told her she had no reason to be inside the house. And for the first time, Amihan wondered whether the most important thing her grandmother had hidden was not where their family came from. It was why someone had worked so hard to make sure nobody inside Casa Montemayor remembered them. Hindi, ako dumating para humingi. Hindi agad nakapasok si Amihan sa loob matapos sabihin ni Attorney Lorenzo Salcedo na siya ang kinatawan ng panganay na sangay ng Montemayor Family Trust. Parang walang gustong maging unang taong gumalaw pagkatapos ng isang sentence na biglang nagpalit ng hierarchy sa buong veranda. Si Daniel ang unang nakabawi. Attorney, with respect, that cannot be correct. Hindi na matalim ang boses niya gaya noong ilang minuto ang nakalipas. Mas kontrolado. Mas mapanganib. Elena left the family decades ago. Everyone knows she renounced her rights. Everyone remembers a version of that story. Sagot ni Lorenzo. That is not the same as a legal renunciation. Tumingin siya sa mga guards na kanina lamang nakahandang ihatid palabas si Amihan. Please, give us space. Agad silang umatras. Ang irony ay hindi nawala kay Amihan. Kanina, hindi mahalaga kung gusto niyang manatili. Ngayon, isang salita ng abogado at lahat ay biglang marunong rumespeto ng distansiya. Attorney, sabi niya, mas malamig kaysa inaasahan niya. Bago ninyo ako papasukin ulit, pakiusap lang. Explain what you just said. Lorenzo looked at her. Inside would be better. I was just told I had no reason to be inside. Daniela stiffened. Mateo lowered his gaze slightly. Amihan continued. So, dito muna. Ano ang ibig sabihin ng representative ng panganay na sangay? Lorenzo opened his leather case and pulled out a thin folder. Not the dramatic stack of inheritance papers Daniela seemed to expect. Your great-grandfather, Don Rafael Montemayor, established the Montemayor Family Trust after the estate disputes that followed his father's death. The trust holds Casa Montemayor, agricultural land surrounding the estate, several long-term land leases, and a significant block of voting shares in Montemayor Holdings. The beneficial structure is divided by branch, not by whoever happens to be living in this house. Amihan listened without fully understanding. Branch meaning children? The descendants of Don Rafael's 3 children? Lorenzo pointed carefully, not touching her. His eldest child was Elena Montemayor. Elena married Andres Reyes against the wishes of her father and left Tagaytay. She stopped using Montemayor socially, but she never signed a valid waiver of her branch rights under the trust. Daniela Cutin. She left. She refused distributions. Yes? Lorenzo replied. She refused direct distributions for years. That does not extinguish a branch. She told the family she wanted nothing. Emotionally. Perhaps. Legally. No? Amihan stared at him. And Elena was... your grandmother Pilar's mother? She felt the box suddenly become heavier in her hands. No? Yes. My lola told me her mother died young. That is also true. Mateo's face had become unreadable. Attorney, chain of descent? He asked. Lorenzo nodded as though expecting the question, Civil registry documents. Elena Montemayor married Andres Reyes in Lucena. Their daughter was Pilar Elena Reyes. Pilar's daughter was Teresa Reyes. Teresa's daughter is Amihan. He looked at Amihan. Your mother. Amihan swallowed. She had her mother's birth certificate somewhere in a folder at home. But she had never once imagined the name of a wealthy family sitting behind the Reyes line. Why wasn't this ever discussed? Because families are very good at preserving documents and very bad at preserving truths they find inconvenient. Daniela scoffed. That's poetic. Attorney. But the trust has been administered for years, without this supposed branch participating. Incorrect. The Elena branch has always remained on the ledger. He pulled out a photocopy. Mateo stepped closer. At the top was a typed accounting schedule with 3 columns: Elena branch, Tomas branch, Beatriz branch. The amounts were not equal every year, but the category existed continuously. Distributions assigned to Elena's branch were retained where no active representative gave instructions. Lorenzo said, some income was reinvested. Some was allocated to reserves. The beneficial interest was never erased. Daniela stared at the paper. Why would nobody in the family know? Some knew. Lorenzo answered. Don Rafael knew. The trustees knew. Your late grandfather Tomas knew enough to know the branch remained technically open. Then why wasn't Elena's family contacted? They were... More than once. Amihan felt something tighten in her chest. My Lola knew. Lorenzo's expression changed. Yes. That answer hurt in a way she had not prepared for. She knew all this. Not every financial detail. But she knew who Elena was, and knew the branch had never been extinguished. And she told me nothing. She had reasons. Everyone keeps saying that. Amihan's voice sharpened. Complicated family. Reasons. Timing. Pwede bang may isang tao dito na magsalita? Nang diretso. Lorenzo nodded slowly. Your grandmother did not trust this family to welcome you before you were old enough to stand your ground. She also did not want you raised believing you were entitled to money you had never worked for. When your mother died, Pilar became even more protective. She asked me to leave the matter alone until she called. And she never called. She did. 3 months before she died. The wind across the veranda felt colder. Amihan looked down at the wooden box. So this was planned. Yes. She knew she was dying. She knew her health was failing. And instead of telling me, she sent me into a house where people thought I was asking for charity. Lorenzo did not defend the dead woman. I'm sorry. That simple answer disarmed her more than an excuse would have. Mateo finally spoke. Maybe we should move inside. The memorial guests are arriving. Amihan looked toward the main entrance where people in formal clothes were pretending not to watch. Fine. Daniela immediately said, We'll use the library. Her tone had changed completely. Would you like someone to carry the box? Amihan looked at her. For a second, neither woman said anything. No. Sagot niya. Kanina kaya ko naman. Inside the library, the atmosphere was almost worse because everyone had become too polite. Someone offered Amihan coffee. Another relative asked whether she needed lunch. A woman who had ignored her in the hallway now smiled and said, You look so much like Elena in the old photos. Amihan wanted to laugh. 20 minutes earlier. Her dress had apparently been offensive enough to remove from the building. Now the same face inside the same clothes was suddenly a family resemblance worth admiring. No. Thank you. Sagot niya sa lahat. She sat at the long table with the box directly in front of her. Mateo took a chair farther away, while Daniela remained beside the fireplace. Lorenzo unlocked the brass clasp with a small key. Amihan found tape beneath the lid. Inside were old letters wrapped in cloth, certified copies of birth and marriage records, a faded photograph of Elena holding a baby, and one envelope bearing Don Rafael's handwriting. Amihan recognized the photograph immediately. The young woman was the same person from the cropped frame in the salon. Only here, the image was complete. Elena stood beside a young Filipino man in a plain white shirt, both smiling toward the camera. On the back, written in blue ink, Elena and Andres. Lucena. Itsen Chobaitsishisi. Amihan picked up one of the letters. It was addressed to Pilar. The handwriting was old-fashioned, but clear. Don Rafael apologized for allowing pride to become more important than my daughter. He wrote that Elena's choice to marry Andres had embarrassed him at the time because the Montemayor family expected a different alliance. But he had never intended to erase her children from the trust. Another letter, years later, asked Pilar to visit Tagaytay. There was no evidence she ever did. Amihan felt angarese, not only at the Montemayors but at her own grandmother. She had this all along. Yes, Lorenzo said. Why keep them from me? You will have to decide what answer you believe. Mine is that Pilar wanted you to become someone before anyone told you that you were an heir. Amihan looked at him sharply. I already was someone. Exactly. That silenced her. Daniela walked to the table. Assuming all of this is valid, what exactly does it give her? The word her made Amihan look up. Not cousin. Not family. Here, Lorenzo took out the trust summary. Not ownership of everything. If that is what you're asking, the trust remains shared among the three branches. Amihan does not become owner of Montemayor Holdings. She becomes current representative of the Elena branch, subject to formal confirmation by the trustees and acceptance of fiduciary obligations. Mateo noted. Voting rights, yes. Distributions, yes. According to trust terms. Estate decisions. Certain protected assets require branch-level approval. Daniela's eyes shifted. Which assets? Lorenzo looked directly at her. Casa Montemayor and the surrounding designated heritage estate are among them. For the first time since the reveal, Daniela looked genuinely alarmed. Not offended, alarmed. Amihan noticed. What? Nothing. Daniela said too quickly. Mateo did not. There's a redevelopment proposal. Daniela turned toward him. Mateo, she should know. It's preliminary. Then explain the preliminary version. Amihan looked between them. Redevelopment of what? Lorenzo sighed softly, as though he had hoped to save this problem for another day. Mateo answered. Part of the estate surrounding Casa Montemayor. Hospitality expansion. Bijas. Events. Pavilion. Destination resort components. On this land? Yes. And why does that matter to me? Daniela straightened. Because if Attorney Salcedo is correct, your branch vote may be required for changes affecting protected trust property. There it was. The first moment when Amihan understood that everyone's sudden politeness was not only guilt, she had become inconvenient. How far along is the project? Tanong niya. Feasibility stage. Daniela said. Mateo added. Concept design and preliminary financing discussions. Board approved, the property company approved, further development work. Trust level consent is still pending. Amihan looked at Lorenzo. And before today? Who voted for Elena's branch? No one. The branch seat remained inactive. So without me, depending on the exact resolution, the trustees would have needed to determine how to handle the dormant branch before final disposition. That is one reason I asked Pilar to address succession of representation. Daniela's jaw tightened. The estate is underperforming. The resort plan is not some vanity project. It supports the property division and creates jobs. Amihan looked at her. I haven't said no. You're already looking at us like we're trying to steal your inheritance. 20 minutes ago you were trying to throw me out of the house. Give me time to adjust my facial expression. Mateo almost smiled but stopped himself. Daniela did not? You don't understand the business. Correct. The land cannot be preserved forever just because of sentimental attachment. I don't have sentimental attachment. I learned it existed today. Exactly. She stepped. Daniela stepped closer. Which is why it would be dangerous for someone with no knowledge of the estate to suddenly hold a deciding vote. Amihan felt the insult but also heard the truth inside it. She knew nothing about trust governance, land valuation, or resort finance. Being legally entitled did not magically make her qualified. Then I won't vote until I understand it. Daniela blinked. What if I'm really required to vote? I'll read everything first. The project has deadlines. That sounds like your problem. It becomes everyone's problem if financing disappears. Then maybe you should have checked whether all 3 family branches actually existed before building a deadline around 2. The memorial began late because half the family was still whispering about Amihan. She did not sit in the front row. She chose a chair near the side, beside Aling Rosa, the old housekeeper who had recognized her. Kamukha mo talaga siya, whispered the woman. Elena. Oo, pero mas matapang ka. Hindi mo naman siya kilala ng matagal. Dito ako nagsimula noong 19 ako. Bata pa ako noon. Why was her portrait removed? The woman's expression darkened. After she left, ayaw makita ni Don Rafael. Years later, hinanap niya. Nasa storage na. Hindi na naibalik. Who decided that? Maraming decision dito, walang umaamin kung sino. Amihan absorbed the sentence. She began to understand Casa Montemayor differently. It was not only an old house full of beautiful objects. It was a building where memory itself had been curated. After the memorial, Lorenzo asked Amihan to stay for a formal briefing. She almost refused. I have a bus back to Quezon. I can arrange transport. I can buy my own ticket. I'm not suggesting otherwise. He corrected himself quickly. Please stay because there are obligations you need to understand before deciding whether to accept representation. Can I refuse? Yes. And if I refuse, the Elena branch remains without an active representative until the succession mechanism identifies another qualified descendant. If any. I don't have siblings. Then the trustees may need court guidance or follow the default process in the deed. Amihan looked at the papers again. So this isn't just a pile of money? No. Good? Lorenzo seemed surprised. Why good? Because if it were only money, I'd leave. Before evening, he showed her one more ledger. The figures were larger than anything Amihan had ever seen attached to a family member's name. But she deliberately ignored the peso amounts first. What caught her attention was the voting schedule. 3 branches. Certain routine matters could pass by majority. But decisions involving sale, long-term encumbrance, or major redevelopment of protected heritage property required a higher threshold that effectively made the Elena branch relevant. Lorenzo tapped the final column. The proposed Casa Montemayor redevelopment cannot proceed to final trust approval without resolving this seat. Amihan stared at the document. Daniela had not been angry only because a poorly dressed stranger appeared during a memorial. Mateo had not become serious only because she resembled a forgotten woman in an old photograph. And Lorenzo had not spent years waiting simply to hand her a check. She had walked into Casa Montemayor, believing the biggest secret was that she belonged to the family. Now she understood the more dangerous truth. Her existence could change what the family was allowed to do with the land. Amihan closed the ledger and looked at Lorenzo. Hindi ako dumating para humingi ng pera. I know. Hindi rin ibig sabihin na dahil may pangalan ako sa papel, pipirma ako sa gusto nila. I know. Then send me everything about the project. From the doorway, Mateo heard her. Daniela did too. And for the first time that day, nobody looked at Amihan's old cardigan. They were looking at the vote she had not yet decided how to use. Ang pangalan na binura sa pader. 3 araw matapos ang memorial, hindi umuwi agad si Amihan sa Quezon. Inalok siya ni Atty. Lorenzo ng guest room sa Casa Montemayor. Ngunit tumanggi siya at pumili ng maliit na inn malapit sa Tagaytay proper. Mas tahimik, paliwanag niya. Ang totoo, hindi pa niya kayang matulog sa bahay na ilang oras lamang matapos siyang itaboy ay biglang gustong tawagin siyang pamilya. Bawat umaga, bumabalik siya sa estate, dala ang parehong canvas bag at isang notebook na puno ng tanong. Hindi siya pumunta para pumili ng bedroom o alamin kung magkano ang distributions ng Elena branch. Ang unang hinihingi niya ay documents trust deed summary, estate maps, tenant lists, operating expenses, redevelopment proposal at historical records tungkol kay Elena. Sa unang meeting, nagdala si Daniela ng printed presentation tungkol sa resort project. Pero pinigilan siya ni Amihan. History muna. History does not pay property taxes. Sagot ni Daniela. Maybe. Pero kung kailangan ninyo ang boto ng branch ko, gusto kong malaman muna kung bakit parang wala kaming branch sa bahay na ito. Matthew, na nakaupo sa gilid ng table, did not interrupt. Sa loob ng 3 araw, napansin niyang hindi gumagawa si Amihan ng dramatic demands. Wala siyang tanong tungkol sa luxury cars, allowance o title. Ang inuulit niya ay mas nakakainis para sa lahat. Nasaan ang records? Sino ang nagdesisyon? Sino ang apektado? Ang archive room ay nasa lumang wing ng Casa Montemayor. Malamig at amoy kahoy. Papel at alikabok. Kasama ni Amihan si Aling Rosa nang makita nila ang dating portrait ni Elena. Hindi ito nasa main collection. Nakasandal lamang sa likod ng 2 framed landscapes. May manipis na telang nakatakip. Nang alisin iyon, para bang nakita ni Amihan ang sarili sa ibang panahon. Si Elena ay nasa early 20s sa painting. Nakasimple ivory dress. Buhok na nakatali sa likod. Walang engrandeng alahas maliban sa maliit na pendant. Pareho ang hugis ng mata nila. Pareho ang bahagyang pagtaas ng kaliwang kilay. Ito ba dati ang nasa hallway, tanong niya? Tumango si Aling Rosa. Sa pagitan ni na Don Rafael at Tomas. Bakit tinanggal? Pagkaalis niya. At hindi na binalik. Hindi. Amihan ran her fingers just above the frame without touching the canvas. So, literal pala siyang binura sa pader. Aling Rosa looked ashamed even though the decision had not been hers. Noong una, galit si Don Rafael. Years later, palagi niya tinatanong kung nasaan ang portrait. Pero kapag sinasabi naming ibabalik, may ibang family member na nagsasabing wag muna dahil baka magsimula na naman ang usapan. Iba-iba. Amihan laughed bitterly. Convenient. Parang iyon ang theme ng buong estate, maraming bagay ang nangyari. Pero walang gustong maging taong gumawa. Sa mga liham ni Don Rafael, mas malinaw ang kwento. Hindi umalis si Elena dahil gusto niyang agawin ng family money o dahil nahulog lang siya sa isang impulsive romance. Nakilala niya si Andres Reyes habang nagtatrabaho ito bilang civil engineer sa isang irrigation project sa Quezon. Hindi galing sa prominenteng pamilya si Andres. At iyon mismo ang naging problema. May planong ipakasal noon si Elena sa anak ng isang business ally ng Montemayors. Hindi legal arrangement. Pero malinaw ang expectation. Nang piliin ni Elena si Andres, tinawag iyon ni Don Rafael na kahihiyan at sinabi sa kanyang anak na kung aalis siya, huwag siyang umasa na babalik sa dating posisyon. Elena left anyway. Makalipas ang ilang taon, nagsimulang magsulat si Don Rafael kay Pilar, ang anak ni Elena, at unti-unting nagbago ang tono ng mga liham, from pride to regret. Sa isang sulat, sinabi niyang ang pagprotekta sa pangalan ng pamilya ay naging dahilan para mawala ang mismong taong gusto niyang protektahan. Ngunit hindi nakabalik si Elena bago siya namatay. Ang reconciliation na gustong mangyari ni Don Rafael ay naiwan sa papel. So he regretted it. Sabi ni amihan kay Lorenzo. Yes, but he never publicly corrected the story. Not fully. Then his regret was private. The damage was public. Lorenzo had no answer. Mas mahirap tanggapin ang papel ni Lola Pilar. Sa isang liham, malinaw na inalok ni Don Rafael na magpadala ng trust distributions directly to Pilar. Tinanggihan niya iyon. Sa isa pang sulat, sinabi ni Pilar na hindi niya gustong lumaki ang anak niyang si Teresa na nakatingin sa Montemayor money bilang solusyon sa lahat. Hindi galit ang tono. Defensive. Parang babae ring pagod ng sukatin kung mahal ba siya dahil pamilya o dahil kailangan ayusin ang nakaraan. Amihan slowly understood why her grandmother had kept the box closed. Hindi dahil gusto niyang itago ang pera. Gusto niyang putulin ang cycle. Ngunit may bahagi pa rin kay amihan na masakit. She could have told me who we were. Sabi niya kay Mateo. Isang hapon, habang lumalabas sila mula archive room. Maybe she was afraid the name would become your identity. She didn't get to decide that forever. No. Mateo nodded. But maybe she wanted to make sure na kapag nalaman mo, may sarili ka ng buhay. Amihan glanced at him. You sound like Lorenzo. I grew up around lawyers and old people. Hazard. You also grew up around this family. That too? Ang redevelopment proposal, ang unang bagay na tunay silang nag-away. Dinala ni Mateo si amihan sa estate map room at ipinaliwanag ang business case. Mahina ang direct income ng Casa Montemayor. Mahal ang maintenance. May bahagi ng farmland na underutilized. Ang property division ng grupo ay may debt pressure mula sa 2 stalled urban projects. At ang Tagaytay Resort Plan ay projected na magdadala ng malaking upfront financing at recurring hospitality revenue. The proposal uses only part of the estate, sabi ni Mateo. Pointing to the map, main heritage house stays. Some farmland converts to villas. Events, facilities, and wellness areas. Some tanong ni amihan. About 38% of the designated surrounding estate in the current concept. That's not some. The rest remains agricultural or open space. And who lives here? Tenant families. Farm workers. Caretakers. How many Mateo post? We're still verifying. Amihan stared at him. You have financing projections, but not a complete list of people who live on the land. We have land use records. I ask people, not hectares. Amihan, this is why these projects go through phases. And this is why people get nervous when developers say preliminary. Kinabukasan, hindi siya naghintay sa family meeting. Bumaba siya sa tenant areas kasama si Aling Rosa at isang estate maintenance supervisor sa unang farm cluster. Nakilala niya ang pamilya ni Mang Ben. na 3 henerasyon ang nagtatanim ng gulay sa parehong lupa. Wala silang ownership, pero may long-term tenancy arrangement at profit sharing sa ilang plots. Sa isa pang area, may maliit na cooperative ng coffee growers at flower farmers. Nang tanungin ni amihan kung alam nila ang resort proposal, iba-iba ang sagot. May nakarinig, may walang alam. May isang magsasakang nagsabing may preliminary surveyors nang dumaan. Sabi nila, baka ilipat kami sa kabilang side kung matuloy. Kuwento nito, may compensation daw. Written tanong ni amihan. Wala pa. Hindi niya sinabi na may voting power siya. Nagpakilala lamang siya bilang descendant ng Elena branch na nagre-review ng estate plan. Ang pinakamalakas na epekto sa kanya ay hindi ang takot ng mga tenant. Iyon ay kung gaano kanormal ang pag-iisip nila na maaaring dumating ang araw na sasabihin sa kanilang kailangan nilang lumipat dahil may mas malaking planong hindi sila kasama sa paggawa. Nang malaman ni Daniela na nag-site visit si amihan nang walang project team, galit itong dumating sa library. You are creating unnecessary anxiety. By asking people where they live, by discussing a proposal that is not final, I didn't tell them to protest. You told them you're reviewing the estate plan? Because I am. Daniela crossed her arms. You have been here 4 days. And you're acting as if you understand the estate better than people who have managed it for years. I don't. Amihan's calm answer seemed to irritate her more. Then stop treating every business decision as exploitation. I'm not. I'm asking who carries the cost. And I'm telling you there are hundreds of employees in the property division whose jobs depend on us stabilizing the business. Then show me why this is the only plan. Because it has the best return? Compared to what? Current use. That's not the same as comparing alternatives? Mateo stepped in before the argument escalated. There were alternatives studied. Daniela turned sharply. Old concepts. Amihan looked at him. What alternatives? Mateo hesitated. Heritage, hospitality, smaller scale lodging, agricultural tourism, cooperative integration. Where are those reports? Some were preliminary. Where archive or project files? Daniela Kutin. They were not financially competitive. Then I'd like to see them. There's no reason to waste time on rejected concepts. Amihan smiled without humor. You're asking me to approve a project worth billions, and you think reading the rejected options is a waste of time. Daniela said nothing. That evening, Mateo found Amihan alone on the veranda reviewing tenant maps. You're making enemies fast, sabi niya. Efficient ako. Daniela isn't completely wrong. I know. That surprised him. The property division really is under pressure. The resort could create jobs. Yes? Then why are you fighting it so hard? I'm not fighting it. I'm fighting the idea that because it creates jobs, every other cost becomes automatically acceptable. Mateo leaned against the railing. You think Daniela only cares about profit? I think she's afraid. Of what? Failing. Losing the division. Maybe being the Montemayor who let the estate become a money pit. Mateo studied her. You figured that out quickly. Poor people don't have a monopoly on fear. He almost laughed. And what are you afraid of? Amihan looked toward the dark fields. That I'll become exactly what everyone expects. Either the poor relative who grabs whatever she can, or the sentimental heir who freezes everything because she just discovered a family story. So what will you do? Read. The reading led her back to the archive. Mateo arranged access to old feasibility folders, but several documents were missing from the digital index. Amihan spent hours going through physical binders, budget notes, and old consultant presentations. Sa isang folder marked Estate Diversification, 2019. May memo referencing an alternative use study, heritage and agricultural integration. The appendix was missing. Sa isa pang board summary, may line item showing consulting fees for the same study, so it existed. Sabi niya. Mateo looked over her shoulder. Yes. Did you see it? He took longer than expected to answer. A draft. Amihan turned toward him. You knew I was still VP then. It was one of several concepts. What happened to it? Daniela's team said the return profile was too weak and the project couldn't support property division debt requirements. Did you verify? Not personally. You just accepted it. The consultant's summary supported her view. Where is the summary? Should be here. It wasn't. For the first time, Mateo looked genuinely uneasy. They searched another cabinet, then an older project archive. Nothing. Finally, a records clerk remembered that some backup files had been moved to a storage server after a systems migration. Makalipas ang isang oras, may lumabas na file name CM, Heritage, Agri, Altius, Final Draft, V7, Access Restricted. But metadata showed it had been uploaded and later archived. Not deleted. Mateo requested retrieval authorization. How long? Tanong ni Amihan. Tomorrow? Maybe. And if Daniela asks why, she will... What will you say? Mateo looked at the file reference. That the current trust representative requested all material alternatives. Good answer. Bago sila umalis sa archive, may napansin si Amihan sa printed board minutes mula sa parehong taon. The resort project had not yet existed in its current form. But one sentence stood out. Alternative, heritage agriculture model, deferred pending review of projected yield assumptions and debt support capacity. Not rejected, deferred. Matthew. He read it. His expression tightened. That's different. From what Daniela said, yes. How different? Enough that we need the full study. Amihan closed the folder. Sa 4 na araw, natutunan niyang hindi sapat na malaman na may karapatan siya sa trust. Hindi sapat na galit siya sa paraan ng pagtrato sa Elena Branch. Hindi sapat na gusto niyang protektahan ng mga tenant. Kung gagamitin niya ang vote niya, kailangan niyang malaman kung ano talaga ang pinipili niya at kung anong impormasyon ang maaaring hindi ipinakita sa kanya. Sa tabi niya, tahimik si Mateo. At doon unang pumasok sa isip niya na maaaring hindi lamang ang pangalan ni Elena ang minsang nawala sa mga pader ng Casa Montemayor. May ibang bagay ding madaling mawala kapag hindi ito bagay sa kuwentong gustong paniwalaan ng pamilya. Isang larawan, isang alaala, isang alternatibong plano, at marahil, isang buong posibilidad na maaaring magbago sa desisyong gusto ng ituring ng lahat na tapos na. Hindi! Lahat ng pamana ay ibinebenta. Kinabukasan, dumating ang recovered file mula sa storage server bago mag-alas 10 ng umaga. Hindi ito secret document na may pulang stamp o dramatikong ebidensiya ng pandaraya. Isang ordinaryong consulting report lamang na mahigit 100 pages. May tables, cost assumptions, occupancy projections at appendices tungkol sa land use. Ngunit sa unang 20 minuto pa lang ng pagbabasa, napansin ni Mateo ang bagay na hindi niya kayang ignore. Ang heritage agriculture model ay hindi pala simpleng mahina ang return. Sa base senaryo nito, kailangan ng mas maliit na capital outlay, mas mababa ang debt, at mas kaunti ang tenant relocation. Ang problema ay mabagal ang cash generation sa unang 4 na taon. Sa kabilang banda, ang resort proposal na kalaunan ay pinalakas ng Daniela team ay may mas mataas na projected revenue, pero nakadepende sa aggressive occupancy assumptions. premium villa pricing at malaking financing package. This wasn't rejected because it was impossible. Sabi ni amihan habang nakaupo sila sa archive table. It was deferred because it didn't solve the property division's debt fast enough. Mateo did not answer immediately. He was reading a note in the old consultant appendix. Heritage model remains viable under moderate growth assumptions if paired with phased hospitality and cooperative supply integration. That sentence had never appeared in the executive summary he remembered. I saw a draft. Sabi niya sa wakas. Not this version. And what did you see? A shortened presentation? Heritage option had lower return, longer payback, and limited debt support. Who prepared the summary? He already knew the answer. Daniela's strategy team. Hindi ibig sabihin noon na peke ang numbers? Nang hilingin ni Mateo ang original working files, lumabas na parehong may legitimate sources ang dalawang models. Ang difference ay assumptions. Sa heritage model, conservative ang occupancy, mataas ang maintenance reserve, at halos walang appreciation assumption sa land value. Sa resort model, mas optimistic ang tourist growth, mas mataas ang projected villa rates, at mas mabilis ang ramp up. Can both be defended? Tanong ni amihan sa independent financial consultant na tinawag ni Lorenzo para i-review ang projections. Yes. Sagot nito. But they are not equally conservative. So may fraud. Not from what I see. Manipulation. Mateo looked uncomfortable. The consultant chose the word carefully. Selective framing. If management presents one scenario using cautious assumptions and another using optimistic assumptions, the comparison can become misleading even if every individual assumption has some basis. Amihan nodded. So Daniela didn't need to fake anything. She just had to make one future look scared and the other look brave. The consultant almost smiled. That is one way to say it. Mateo did not. Daniela arrived in the library that afternoon already knowing what they had found. You went through archive working files without telling me, she said. Attorney Salcedo authorized it. Sagot ni Mateo. I'm not asking who authorized it. I'm asking why you didn't come to me first. Because Amihan requested all material alternatives. You could have told her the heritage concept was inadequate. That's what I believed. Daniela looked at him sharply. Believed. Amihan placed the two summary tables side by side. Your team used a 7-year conservative occupancy curve for heritage lodging and a 3-year aggressive ramp for the resort. Why? Because they are different products. Fina. Then explain the difference. The resort attracts higher spend guests, international operators, events, longer stays. And why is land appreciation included in the resort? Upside but not in the heritage model? Daniela's jaw tightened. Because the resort changes the commercial value of the estate. So does a successful heritage district? Not to the same extent. Maybe. But if you're comparing them, why not model both? Daniela turned to Mateo. Are you letting her interrogate strategy now? Mateo stayed seated. She has a branch vote. She's entitled to understand the assumptions. She has been here less than a week. That doesn't make the question wrong. Iyon ang unang sandali na naramdaman ni Daniela na hindi na neutral si Mateo. Careful. Sabi niya. Hindi malakas. Mas personal. My family put you through school. Your father had a job here because of my grandfather. You have been trusted with every major development we built. Mateo's expression changed slightly. Naroon ang utang na loob na buong buhay niyang dala. I know. Then act like it. Meaning don't help someone who arrived 6 days ago derail a plan we have spent 2 years building. Tahimik si Mateo. Amihan watched him. Suddenly uncomfortable. Hindi niya gustong maging dahilan para pagsabihan itong walang utang na loob. Ngunit bago siya makialam, sinabi ni Mateo, "My father taught me that utang na loob means remembering who helped you. He never taught me it means pretending numbers say something they don't." Daniela stared at him. The room went still. "You're choosing her. I'm choosing full disclosure to the trustees." Same thing. No, it isn't. Nag-request si Mateo ng formal trustee session with 3 scenarios instead of 1. Current use, full resort redevelopment, at revised heritage agriculture model. Pinilit ni Amihan na wag gawing romantic ang third option. If it loses money, sabihin natin, kaya 2 araw silang nagtrabaho kasama ang independent consultant, estate operations team at tenant representatives upang baguhin ang lumang study gamit ang current numbers. Hindi sapat ang lumang concept. Masyadong maliit ang hospitality component at kulang ang revenue streams. Si Amihan ang nagmungkahi ng cooperative integration dahil iyon ang alam niya mula Quezon farmers and artisans could become suppliers rather than decorative background. Mateo added that part of the lower impact land near the ridge could support a limited number of premium lodging units without touching the oldest tenant clusters. Lorenzo insisted on legal protections for long-term tenants. The finance consultant capped debt and inserted downside scenarios. This is not the highest return plan, sabi ni Mateo habang tinitingnan ang model. Good, sagot ni Amihan. I didn't ask for the highest return. Trustees will then show them the cost of each return. Sa formal presentation, unang nagsalita si Daniela. Hindi siya mukhang kontrabida. Mukha siyang executive na pagod at galit dahil naniniwala siyang may ibang tao na winawasak ang solusyon na matagal niyang binuo. Ipinakita niya ang debt pressure ng property division, stalled projects sa Metro Manila, at pangangailangang magkaroon ng bagong cash-generating asset. If we move too slowly, sabi niya, we preserve land but weaken the company that maintains it. May punto siya. Ang full resort plan ay makakalikha ng mas maraming construction jobs at potentially higher hospitality employment. May relocation cost pero may compensation budget. May environmental mitigation. Hindi ito simpleng bulldozer plan. I did not wake up one morning wanting to destroy our estate. Sabi niya, I am trying to keep the property division from becoming dependent on asset sales every time the market turns. Pagkatapos ay ipinakita ni Mateo ang sensitivity analysis. Kapag bumaba ang resort occupancy by 15% at mas mabagal ang villa sales, debt service pressure rises sharply. Kapag mataas ang construction overruns, mas kailangan pa ng additional financing. The plan can work, sabi niya. But it carries more downside concentration than the executive summary showed. Daniela looked at him as if slapped. You helped build that summary. Yes. So now you're rewriting history. No. I'm correcting my own mistake, which was I accepted the assumption package because it supported the strategic direction we already preferred. One trustee shifted in his seat. Mateo continued. I should have requested a like-for-like comparison. I didn't. And now tanong ng chairman. Now I recommend trustees evaluate all 3 scenarios with aligned assumptions. Daniela laughed once. Without humor. Amazing. 1 week with Amihan and suddenly everyone has discovered governance. Amihan did not react. No. Sabi niya. Maybe 1 week with someone who wasn't here when the preferred answer became normal? Nang turn na ni Amihan. Hindi niya ginamit ang salitang inheritance sa unang 5 minuto. Ipinakita niya ang estate map. Tinukoy niya ang tenant clusters. Heritage house. existing farm zones, access roads at proposed development areas. I'm not asking you to freeze Casa Montemayor in time, sabi niya. And I'm not asking the property division to subsidize nostalgia forever. Then she presented the hybrid plan. Casa Montemayor would become a heritage hospitality anchor with curated events, limited high-end rooms and restoration workshops. Agricultural zones would remain productive under formalized tenant protections and cooperative supply agreements. Coffee, flowers, vegetables, and local crafts from estate-linked cooperatives could supply hospitality operations. A smaller lodging cluster could be developed on less sensitive land, with expansion allowed only after occupancy and cash flow thresholds were actually met. Debt would be capped below the full resort plan. Lower upside, sabi na trustee. Yes. Lower job creation, lower construction, employment at first. But more existing livelihoods stay intact. Longer payback. Yes. Then why should we choose it? Amihan looked at the table. Because you are not choosing between profit and sentiment. You are choosing which risks belong to the family and which risks you push onto people who have less power to absorb them. Daniela leaned forward. And if the hybrid plan underperforms, will you personally cover the shortfall from your branch distribution? The room went quiet. Amihan looked at her. If the trust approves it, my branch carries the same proportional economic consequence as the others. Easy answer. Then ask the harder question, which is, if your resort plan underperforms, do the relocated tenant families get their homes back? Daniela did not answer. That's the asymmetry. Amihan continued. Some mistakes cost us lower distributions. Some mistakes cost other people the place they've lived for 3 generations. Hindi iyon theatrical. Walang palakpak. Ngunit Mateo saw several trustees look down at the map again. The vote took nearly an hour because Lorenzo insisted on reading the protected property provisions aloud and recording conflict disclosures. Amihan did not vote first. Gusto niyang marinig ang iba. The Beatrice branch split internally before its representative finally supported the hybrid option. Tomas Branche, represented by Daniela's uncle, backed the full resort. Ang trustee chair supported hybrid subject to quarterly financial review. Sa dulo, nakasalalay ang final threshold sa Elena branch. Lahat ay tumingin kay Amihan. Hindi niya naramdaman ang thrill ng power na inaasahan niya. Mas mabigat iyon. 1 linggo lang ang nakalipas. Hindi siya pinapasok sa bahay. Ngayon, naghihintay ang parehong pamilya sa isang salita niya tungkol sa lupaing milyon-milyong piso ang halaga. Elena Branch votes for the Hybrid Heritage Agriculture Plan, sabi niya. With tenant protections, debt cap, independent performance review, and no expansion into protected farm zones without another trust vote. Lorenzo recorded it. Approved? Narrowly. Hindi sumabog si Daniela. Isinara lamang niya ang folder. Congratulations. Sabi niya kay Amihan. You got your first vote. This isn't a trophy. We'll see how you feel when the numbers come in below plan. Then I'll sit in the same room and explain them. You think responsibility is that simple? No. That's why I didn't sign your plan after one presentation. Daniela stood. Before leaving, she looked at Mateo. And you? Flagship development leadership is being reassigned. Effective immediately. Lorenzo started to object, but Mateo raised a hand. She has authority over the project team. You knew this would happen. Sabi ni Amihan. Yes. And you still presented the study, yes. Daniela's face hardened. Don't make him a martyr. He helped build the plan he just attacked. Mateo answered before Amihan could. She's right. I'm not a martyr. I'm correcting something late. Pagkatapos ng meeting, natagpuan ni Amihan si Mateo sa lumang veranda. Wala na ang dark barong niya. Nakaroll up ang sleeves at may hawak na 2 paper cups ng kape. Iniabot niya ang isa. Peace offering, tanong niya. You didn't fight with me today. Preventive maintenance. She laughed. Very facilities-oriented. Tahimik silang tumingin sa estate. I'm sorry you lost the project. Sabi ni Amihan. Don't be. That sounds heroic. It isn't. I'm angry. At me a little. Napatingin siya sa kanya. Good. Why good? Because if you said you were completely fine, I wouldn't trust you. Mateo smiled. I spent 2 years on that resort. Part of me still thinks it might have worked better. It might have. And you're okay admitting that. Of course. I didn't vote against certainty. There was no certainty. Mateo looked toward the fields. Daniela wasn't wrong about one thing. The property division needs results. Then we produce results. We. The word escaped before either could decide what it meant. Amihan sipped her coffee. You know the estate. I know cooperatives and restoration. The trustees approve a plan neither of us can execute alone. I was removed from flagship development. Not from the company. You're recruiting me now. I'm asking whether your utang na loob extends to helping the family even when the family is annoyed at you. Mateo laughed quietly. That's cruel. Answer. He looked at her. Yes. Bago lumubog ang araw, bumalik si Amihan sa main hallway. Ang portrait ni Elena ay wala pa rin sa pader. Nasa restoration room pa iyon. Nililinis ang frame bago ibalik. Tinanong siya ni Aling Rosa kung gusto ba niyang ilagay sa dating pwesto. Amihan looked at the empty patch between Don Rafael and the other descendants. Yes, sabi niya. Pero wag dahil nanalo tayo sa vote. Bakit? Because she belonged there even when the family was angry at her. Aling Rosa nodded. Sa pagkakataong iyon, naunawaan ni Amihan na hindi lahat ng pamana ay lupa. Shares o lumang bahay. May pamana ring pagkakamali. May pamana ring katahimikan. May pamana ring takot na baka kapag hindi mo pinili ang pinakamalaking kita, ibig sabihin mahina ka. At kung magiging tunay siyang tagapagmana ng Elena branch, hindi sapat na tanggapin niya ang mga bagay na naiwan para sa kanya. Kailangan din niyang malaman kung alin sa mga minanang ugali ng pamilyang iyon ang hindi na dapat ipasa sa susunod. Ang tahanan na hindi kailangang patunayan. 1 taon matapos ang trust vote, muling binuksan sa publiko ang Casa Montemayor. Ngunit hindi bilang grand luxury resort na minsang nasa mga rendering ng property division. Ang lumang bahay ay naging heritage estate na may 12 guest rooms lamang sa restored wings. Isang maliit na events pavilion na itinayo sa dating service yard. Heritage tours, restoration workshops at weekend farm market na pinapatakbo kasama ang tenant cooperatives. Sa ridge area na hindi ginagamit ng matagal ng tenants. 8 premium cottages lamang ang unang phase sa halip na 2 dosenang villas. Hindi ito kasing laki ng projected revenue sa dating resort plan. Walang dramatic first-year profit. May 2 buwan pa ngang bumaba ang occupancy sa target dahil sa mahinang tourism season at mas mahal kaysa inaasahan ang restoration ng lumang roof structure. Ngunit hindi rin kailangang umutang ng kasing laki ng full redevelopment. Hindi na-displace ang pangunahing tenant clusters. At nang ipakita ni Attorney Lorenzo ang unang annual trust report, ang heritage plan ay nasa loob pa rin ng approved debt ceiling at may enough operating cash para hindi kailanganing ibenta ang ibang protected land. Note, espektakular. Sabi ng isang trustee. Amihan looked at the report. Stable, yes. Then for year 1, I'll take stable. Hindi lumipat si amihan sa Casa Montemayor. Iyon ang unang bagay na kinagulat ng pamilya. Maraming nagsabing practical lamang na bigyan siya ng permanent suite sa estate dahil representative siya ng Elena branch. Ngunit pinili niyang manatili sa maliit na bahay nila sa Quezon at pumunta sa Tagaytay 2 o 3 beses isang linggo, depende sa trust meetings at cooperative work. May bagong second-hand vehicle siya dahil hindi practical ang laging bus sa dami ng documents na dala. Pero iyon na ang pinakamalaking lifestyle change na pinayagan niya sa sarili. Hindi rin siya biglang nagbago ng wardrobe. Kapag trustee meeting, marunong siyang magsuot ng structured blouse, tailored trousers at simpleng blazer. Kapag bumababa sa farm areas, bumabalik siya sa cotton dresses, cardigan at flats. Minsan sinabi ng isang auntie na dapat siyang magkaroon ng more appropriate air image lalo na sa press events. Amihan answered, "Kung kailangan ng trust ng costume para seryosohin ang boto ko, may problema tayo?" Hindi na inulit ng auntie. Unti-unti ring nawala ang novelty ng pagiging poor air. Dumating ang araw na mas maraming empleyado ang nakakakilala sa kanya dahil sa tenant meetings at supply negotiations kaysa sa viral family gossip noong unang lumabas ang inheritance story. Ang cooperative integration ang naging pinakamalaking personal na project niya. Sa halip na ang estate hospitality unit ay bumili lamang ng imported products at Manila suppliers. Nagkaroon ng procurement agreement sa local coffee growers, flower farmers, woodworkers at food cooperatives mula Quezon at Cavite. Hindi charity prizes. Hindi rin automatic preference. May quality standards, delivery schedules at transparent bidding thresholds. Iyon ang pinilit ni amihan dahil ayaw niyang maging decorative lamang ang salitang cooperative sa marketing brochure. If they cannot meet the standard, we help them understand the standard. Hindi natin binababa ang standard para lang masabi na local. Paliwanag niya sa hospitality team. Sa restoration workshops, ang mga bisita ay pwedeng makita kung paano inaayos ang old furniture. Kasama ang ilang artisans mula sa sariling cooperative ni amihan. Ang una niyang na-restore na piece para sa Casa Montemayor ay ang lumang writing desk ni Elena na natagpuan sa storage. Hindi niya nilagay sa private room. Inilagay iyon sa archive exhibit kasama ng mga liham ni na Elena at Don Rafael. Pati ang buong kwento kung bakit umalis si Elena. May 2 relatives na gustong gawing mas graceful ang exhibit text. Amihan refused. Kung gagawin nating elegant ang history hanggang mawala ang mali, inuulit lang natin ang parehong problema. Si Daniela ay nanatili sa Montemayor property business ngunit hindi na nakabalik sa absolute control ng estate redevelopment. Inilipat siya sa urban property restructuring kung saan nagkaroon siya ng pagkakataong ayusin ang 2 stalled projects na minsang dahilan kung bakit desperado siyang gamitin ang Casa Montemayor bilang malaking revenue engine. Magaling pa rin siya. Sa loob ng 1 taon, nakapagbenta siya ng non-core commercial parcel at nakapag-renegotiate ng financing sa isang project. Kaya bumaba ang pressure sa division. Iyon mismo ang irony na hindi nawawala kay amihan naging mas viable ang hybrid estate plan dahil unti-unti ring naayos ni Daniela ang ibang problemang ginamit noon upang sabihing walang ibang choice. Hindi sila naging close. Ngunit hindi na rin sila laging magkalaban. Sa quarterly review, may mga pagkakataong si Daniela pa ang nagtatanong kung bakit masyadong mababa ang heritage room rates at si amihan ang nagtutulak ng mas aggressive pricing. Akala ko ikaw ang sentimental heir. Biro ni Daniela minsan. Sentimental doesn't mean bad at math. Sagot ni amihan. Debatable. From the woman who used optimistic villa occupancy, Daniela stared at her for 2 seconds, then laughed despite herself. Hindi apology iyon. Pero sapat na para makita nilang pareho na maaari silang mag-disagree nang hindi kailangang burahin ang isa. Si Mateo naman ay hindi na ibinalik sa flagship development lead. Matapos ang vote, Inilagay siya sa mas maliit na Sustainable Development Unit na dating halos advisory lamang ang function. Para sa ilan, demotion iyon. Para kay Mateo. Noong una, hindi niya ipinanggap na wala siyang resentment. Sa unang 3 buwan, nahirapan siyang makita ang ibang executive na humawak sa projects na dati sa kanya dumadaan. Ngunit unti-unting lumaki ang sustainable unit dahil ang Casa Montemayor model ay naging pilot para sa iba pang land assets ng grupo. Siya ang nanguna sa tenant mapping standards, phase development thresholds at mixed-use projects na hindi nakabase lamang sa maximum buildable area. Hindi agad bumalik ang prestige niya. Pero bumalik ang credibility? Mas mahalaga, tumigil siyang magdesisyon ayon sa tanong na, ano ang inaasahan ng Montemayor family sa akin? At nagsimulang itanong, ano ang kaya kong ipagtanggol kapag nasa harap na ako ng board? Minsan sinabi niya kay amihan, mas madali pala maging loyal kapag hindi mo kailangan magsinungaling para patunayan iyon. Sumagot siya, took you 31 years. You've been in this family 1 year and already unbearable ka. Inheritance? Hindi rin naging mabilis ang relasyon nila. Walang biglang declaration sa veranda pagkatapos ng vote. Walang engagement dahil pareho silang nasa estate. Sa loob ng 1 taon, nagsimula lamang iyon sa mga kape pagkatapos ng meetings. Drives papunta sa tenant clusters. At mga argumento tungkol sa restoration budgets. Si Mateo ang unang umamin na gusto niya si amihan, pero ginawa niya iyon ng walang grand gesture. Nasa farm cafe sila noon pagkatapos ng isang inspection. I like you, sabi niya. Amihan continued stirring her coffee. That sounds inconvenient. Very. And I'm not asking you to do anything about it today. She looked at him. Good. That's all. You want a trust vote, he laughed. 3 linggo bago sila unang lumabas sa dinner na walang kasamang project folder. At kahit pagkatapos noon, malinaw kay amihan ang boundary, hindi niya gustong maging kwento ng provincial girl who inherited a mansion and then fell for the polished executive. Mateo understood. For the record, you disliked me before you knew I was polished. Correct. Progress. Minimal? Sa unang anniversary ng Heritage Estate opening, nagkaroon ng maliit na family and community event sa Casa Montemayor. Hindi formal memorial at hindi investor gala. May tenant families, cooperative suppliers, employees, trustees at relatives. Ang main hallway ay iba na rin. Nasa dating bakanteng pwesto ang restored portrait ni Elena. Hindi mas malaki kaysa sa iba at hindi rin ginawang centerpiece. Sa ilalim nito ay maliit na plaque, Elena Montemayor Reyes, eldest daughter of Rafael Montemayor. Her bronze remained part of the family trust. Walang dramatic statement tungkol sa injustice. Sapat ang pangalan. Nang unang makita ni amihan na nakabalik na ang portrait, ilang minuto siyang tahimik. Aling Rosa stood beside her. Okay na tanong ng matanda. Hindi naman nababalik ang panahon. Hindi. Pero at least hindi na siya nawawala. Oo. Tumingin si amihan sa painting. For years. Ang pamilya ay nabuhay na parang pwedeng alisin sa pader ang isang tao at unti-unting mawawala rin ang karapatan niyang maalala. Ngayon, hindi na kailangang gawing santo si Elena para itama iyon. Kailangan lamang ibalik ang pangalan sa lugar na matagal nang para sa kanya. Bandang hapon. Dumating si amihan mula sa supplier area, suot ang simpleng mustard cotton dress at cream cardigan. May dala siyang 2 sample baskets mula sa cooperative dahil gusto niyang ipakita sa hospitality manager ang bagong packaging. Sa may entrance, may bagong event staff na hindi pa siya kilala. Ma'am, tawag nito ng magalang. Para po ba kayo sa supplier entrance? Nasa left service lane po. Amihan stopped. Hindi siya offended. Sa totoo lang, Halos gusto niyang tumawa dahil parang bumalik ang buong kwento sa unang araw. Bago pa siya sumagot, dumating si Daniela mula sa foyer. Nakita ng staff ang executive at agad nag-straighten. Sorry. Ma'am Daniela. I was directing her to. Tiningnan ni Daniela ang basket, ang cardigan ni amihan, at saka ang staff. 1 taon na ang nakalipas. Marahil siya mismo ang magsasabing ilabas ang babae bago dumating ang pamilya. Ngayon, simple lang ang sagot niya. May entrance. Pamilya siya. Natahimik ang event staff. Sorry po. Ma'am, amihan shook her head. Okay lang. Pagkatapos ay tumingin siya kay Daniela. At kahit supplier ako, hindi naman dapat sa likod lagi dumaan. Daniela froze for 1 second sa tabi ng doorway. Narinig ni Mateo at napatawa ng malakas. Daniela gave him a deadly look before turning back to amihan. Fine. Main entrance for suppliers with scheduled delivery access. Subject to event security. Better? You are exhausting. Family trait. Definitely Elena Branch. This time, both women smiled. Hindi ibig sabihin na nakalimutan na ni amihan ang unang araw. Hindi ibig sabihin na wala ng class assumption sa pamilya. Ngunit ngayon, kapag lumitaw ang parehong instinct, may taong kayang tawaging iyon sa pangalan bago maging permanenteng rule. Pagkatapos ng event, naglakad sina amihan at Mateo sa terrace habang unti-unting umaalis ang mga bisita. Sa ibaba, makikita ang farm zones na hindi naging Villa Rose. At sa malayo ang maliit na cottage cluster na halos full occupancy sa weekend. Numbers are better than Q2, sabi ni Mateo. I know. You already saw the report Lorenzo sent it. Of course. You sound disappointed. I was going to impress you. Try flowers. From our own cooperative. Margin, protection. Umiling siya. You really became a Montemayor. Amihan stopped walking. No. Mateo looked at her. I became someone who represents one branch of a trust. That's not the same thing. Fair. I'm still Amihan Reyes. Also fair. Nagpatuloy sila. Pagdating sa dulo ng terrace, tinanong ni Mateo kung babalik ba siya sa Quezon ng gabing iyon. Tomorrow morning. So dinner. You're asking because you like me or because occupancy is good, both can be true. Dangerous answer. Still learning. She smiled. Dinner. Hindi niya kailangan ng Casa Montemayor para patunayan na may halaga siya bago pa siya makarating doon. Hindi rin kailangan ng bahay na iyon na maging museum lamang para mapatunayan na may halaga ang nakaraan. Ang kailangan nilang matutunan ay mas mahirap maaaring gamitin ang inheritance nang hindi pinapalamon dito ang buong pagkatao mo. Maaaring baguhin ang lupa nang hindi binubura ang mga taong naroon. Maaaring tanggapin ang pera nang hindi kailangang sambahin ito. At maaaring mahalin ang pamilya nang hindi tinatanggap ang bawat lumang ugali bilang obligasyon. Bago pumasok sa main hall, napatingin si amihan sa portrait ni Elena. Pagkatapos ay sa pintuang minsan siyang inilabas dahil hindi bagay ang damit niya sa bahay. Ngayon, walang guard na nagtatanong kung sino siya. Wala ring taong kailangang sumigaw na tagapagmana siya. At iyon marahil ang pinakamalaking pagbabago. Hindi na niya kailangang patunayan na may karapatan siyang pumasok. Pero mas mahalaga, hindi na rin niya kailangang maniwala na ang karapatang iyon ang dahilan kung bakit siya karapat-dapat igalang. Pumasok si amihan sa Casa Montemayor, dala pa rin ang canvas bag niya. Hindi bilang mahirap na kamag-anak. Hindi bilang bagong prinsesa. Hindi bilang babaeng nanalo laban kay Daniela. Kundi bilang isang taong sa wakas ay naunawaan na ang tunay na mana ay hindi ang bahay na maiiwan sa'yo. Ito ang responsibilidad na magpasya kung anong bahagi ng bahay ang dapat manatili. Anong bahagi ang kailangang baguhin? at kung anong uri ng pamilya ang gusto mong iwan sa mga taong susunod pagkatapos mo.